Welcome to the party. I'm Sam Ekstrom of Locked On Sports Minnesota. Luke Braun gets a ring before the Minnesota Vikings. We'll talk about that.
Hey, this is Arif Hasan with the Wide Left Substack. I was secretly at Luke Braun's wedding the whole time.
Luke Inman at Luke_Spinman. So now Luke's married. I'm married. Sam's even married. Arif Hasan, you're on the clock.
And I'm Luke Braun from Locked On Vikings, and I know Arif's married to the game.
Locked On Sports Minnesota Podcast. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota Football Party.
What's up, everyone, on a Monday? It's the Minnesota Football Party on Locked On Sports Minnesota. So glad you joined us today, whether you're watching us live, which we're doing now at 11 a.m. Central on Mondays and Thursdays, or after the fact. Please subscribe to Locked On Sports Minnesota. Help us get to 8,000 followers, or listen to us on the Locked On Vikings podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts. Also, the Sirius XM app. Lots of ways to watch and listen. You met the panel, Luke, Arif. I'm Sam Ekstrom. Big show planned today, and it's brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Could the Minnesota Vikings draft 2 quarterbacks in the first 2 rounds? PFF thinks so. Mike Florio believes that tampering charges could improve the Vikings' first-round draft position. Rampant speculation, running wild in this week's edition of the Minnesota Football Party. Of course, we will indulge it. We'll indulge all of it. But we give the first word to the married man, Luke Braun, who joins now creates a majority of married individuals on this panel. Arif
Anything
Hasan,
that isolates Arif makes me happy.
Right. Yeah.
Anything that separates me
oddball
from Luke makes me happy.
There you go.
This is how deals get done.
At the last hour, the 25th hour. Here we go.
All right, here's my question. How distracted were you during your wedding day leading up to it? Were you like super focused, or on tasks and just love and everything that had to be done? Or were you kind of on trying to kill time, hanging out with dudes, checking your phone? Because that was me. I was
the 10 minutes before we left.
Yeah. I just felt like the clock was just moving in slow motion.
Oh my God, that morning took about 14
this party
years.
started. Yeah.
The bride left the hotel first, and we were doing a first look thing, so I didn't want to see her. So she left the hotel first, and that's a whole to do to get her in the car and get the dress in the car and all that stuff, and there's this whole thing, right? So we were in one of the groomsmen's hotel rooms, just waiting for them to get out of our room and get set up. And the maid of honor was texting me okay, yeah, we need 10 minutes. I was okay, 10 minutes won't be there. And I'd check my phone again. It's been 30 seconds. I'm ready. I need to. It was agonizingly slow once we got there. But I think once we got to the actual venue, and then the first couple hours was just taking pictures and stuff and doing the first look. And once things started happening, then time started moving again.
Was there anything that you weren't prepared for, or something that happened a little bit differently than maybe what you pictured it in your head for being okay, this is my wedding day. Here it is.
So we did get rained on. We had a beautiful venue with this awesome terrace that had overlooked this gorgeous mountain ravine, California mountains. And then we couldn't use it. So we had to go inside, which the building is still gorgeous. And we actually our wedding coordinator came through huge and was oh, I know a florist who has an indoor arch you can rent, and you can do the flowers on that instead of the outdoor arch that they have that's bolted down. That's beautiful. So we did that, and it all ended up really, really, really beautiful anyways. But it was the 36 hours beforehand, dealing with it once we knew the forecast was quite the scramble.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, congratulations. We're really happy for you. Luke Braun gets married, and now he can do the Wings challenge for us. Now that all the important stuff.
Part.
Yeah, that's the real important stuff. Yeah, the technicalities of getting married, that's out of the way. Now we can focus on the Wings challenge. That'll be coming up as he pays the price.
I can injure myself safely. That's the
Right. We're going to get to some of these hot topics. And thanks all for watching us live, chiming in in the comments section. If you leave questions, by the way, for us, we should get to them later in the show. But let's start with this Sam Munson mock draft. This is what you get 2 weeks before the draft. You get the hot takes. You get the rampant, wild rumors.
You can really tell how bored everyone is.
Yeah, he is projecting the Vikings to trade up to 9, but not using 23 in the trade up, and then back from 23 into the second round. And with 9, they take
in the abstract, but
with 9 they take May, and with like 30, I think it's 38 or 34, maybe 34. I think
34.
They take Michael Penix Jr., a 2 quarterback first 2 rounds of the draft, which I think would be the most dramatic quarterback drafting move of all time, with number 1 probably being what, RG3 and Cousins in the first and fourth.
Yeah, I mean, last week, Sam, we talked about the craziest thing we think could happen for the Vikings on draft night or draft weekend. Nobody threw this out, and
No,
sure
that
enough,
would
Sam
be
comes
pretty
out with this
crazy.
mock. This would probably be it, I would think. In this scenario, let me ask you, do you start Penix out the gate? You only got 4 years with Penix in the second round. May, you got the 5th-year option.
You got 5 with May. You start whoever wins the camp competition. Come on, Luke.
Okay, fair enough. All right, fair enough. No, I was just going to say, you know, I've probably written over 100 mocks over the years. I know Arif has as well. At the end of the day, I think the main point is typically to, you know, simulate every possible scenario, right? Like, it's an exercise to help us all have a better idea of all the options on the table. So you're really prepared for anything on draft night. That way you got plan A, B, C, D, E, etc. But you know, I'm not going to rip anybody's mock draft. You never know what's going to happen on draft day. Let's be real. We know nothing.
That's
so
Minnesotan for this mock sucks.
We've seen so many off-the-wall things happen.
I would never
day.
say a mean
don't know
thing
anything
about another person's mock draft now having seen this one.
But yeah. Well, you know, I was gonna say. I mean, having said that, right? I mean, there is some pretty off the wall stuff in here.
He's
not
got
only
the Broncos.
not only May at 9, but the Broncos. I was just gonna say,
May
you're
falling to
Sam,
9 is like
Broncos
one of the
trade.
craziest things here.
and JJ McCarthy at 2, which okay. I mean, Vegas has. I think it's JJ to go in the top 5 minus 400 now. So maybe JJ at 2 isn't out of the realm of possibility. But yeah, that Denver trade alone to get from 12 to 3 with only a 3rd rounder and a 2025 first, that seems cheap. Why didn't the Vikings just do that with the 23 then? I mean, you know, Dallas Turner lasting at 23. Okay, maybe Zach Frazier.
And the Vikings not taking Turner.
Yeah,
right.
Right.
Yeah.
I would bet anything that the Vikings at some point in their draft preparation process consider or have considered this scenario. Like they probably talk about it because they're doing the same thing everybody's doing with their mock drafts, where they're trying to figure out every single permutation of everything. No idea too crazy. Let's talk about it at least a little.
Yeah,
that's the whole philosophy.
I'm sure that this is like, I don't know about on the table, but I'm sure that this is something that's been discussed. The thing is, I'm not opposed to taking another quarterback in the draft. I just don't think the 2nd or 3rd or even 4th round is really like an appropriate place for that.
Yeah.
One thing that so the reasoning that Sam gives is that, you know, Adolfo Mensa has a finance background, and this is a way to diversify your investments, because if one hits, you hit big. And like in the abstract, that I think makes a lot of sense, right? I think, you know, from a pure kind of numbers in a vacuum sense, like this is actually a great idea for the reasons that we talked about in the last show, right? That when quarterbacks hit, they hit so big that these other positions, they kind of don't matter in context. And if you've got maybe about a 40% chance that a quarterback hits and you double dip at that, you're setting yourself up some really good odds. And if both quarterbacks hit, you could trade one for a ransom, right? So great. Abstractly, this makes a lot of sense. From a human perspective, this sucks. Right,
especially
like, and I don't
for Sam Darnold, really for Sam Darnold,
yeah, right.
Jaron Hall.
Well, I don't. Yeah,
Nick
I don't
Mullins.
just mean for
You're also like
Hall
guaranteeing that one of these is a miss,
right?
Yeah,
if I was Michael Penix, I would be steamed, right? Like, and that's not what I mean. I don't mean just for Sam Darnold or for Michael Penix or whatever. It's bad for roster management, right? Because like one thing that Cousins has talked about that I think he's probably right about is that one of the things that he's always kind of sought is a quote unquote license to lead, right? Where he is the unquestioned starter, right? But that does change the way that you interact with the rest of the locker room when there is no debate about who should start. There is no no one is taking sides in the locker room about who needs to win the competition or whatever, right? There's no alliances being built or anything like that. When a coaching staff selects a player, he's not doing so in opposition to the locker room, which creates its own problems. Plus, reps are good. It is good for your starter to have as many reps with the other starters as possible. And like a camp competition, like it's always nice to have competition. People talk about the value of competition all the time, and I don't disagree with that. But at some point, you need to build chemistry. And at some point, you need to maximize the synthesis of the offense, to maximize all of the moving parts working together so that you can be a greater whole than the sum of your parts. And that takes time with the first team.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's bad roster management, like you said. There's a reason it's never been done before, unless I'm forgetting somebody. Sam, you mentioned it. Washington did it with RG3 and Kirk, but that was the 4th round, right? And even that was super off the wall at the time. Granted, it kind of worked out for him. So maybe it's not that crazy, but I just think this team has way too many other needs. We've talked about it for months and months to have the luxury to double dip like that within that few of picks from one another. And more so too, if you use a top 10 pick on a guy, you should be confident and ecstatic.
Yeah.
He's the guy, right? So odds wise, you see something like this, I'm thinking 200 to 1, 300 to 1. If you ran the simulator 200 times, maybe once you'd get that outcome.
You know what it guarantees? Yeah. It guarantees that Drake May is Ricky Rubio and Michael Penix is Johnny Flynn and Bo Nix turns into Steph Curry.
Yeah, there we go.
Or Rattler.
Like, what part of the logic of like diversifying assets and like the finance thing is that you give yourself access to this scenario where both of them hit and you kind of doubled your equity and you did really great. But in this particular case, you don't have access to that outcome because you can't have both quarterbacks hit. One's going to start, one's not going to start. And the one who's not starting is going to be seen as a waste of that capital if they're drafted that high.
Unless
for a guy who's not starting, that's a waste. So like you're guaranteeing.
Can you get a day 2 pick in 3 years?
If you can convince a team that the other quarterback hit, you can trade that player.
That's what I was saying. Yeah.
Yeah. If you could like find a way to trade that player but are you going to profit off of that? Or are you going to draft a guy in the second round and then get a third back? That's not a hit.
With a second round pick, that one's tough. The only scenario where that really works out is if like your starter goes down due to injury, right? And you have
and you can
play the guy. And it's like, that's kind of a weird scenario to gamble on.
Right. Like that's not really something that you reasonably have access to, except for like weird corner cases where everything turns out perfect. But I think the idea of like a day 3 quarterback in addition to the starting quarterback, but you wouldn't look at that guy as a potential, a lottery ticket, a low odds, maybe he's a starter. Really, that guy's Jaren Hall competition for the Devy QB3 spot, which ain't a bad idea at all. But you can't look at like a 6. You're not looking at, and nobody's looking at Nate Stanley's and being like, oh, that guy might be the starter someday. No, this is like a random Devy kind of QB3 backup. Maybe you're hoping he becomes depth, which is what all day 3 picks are. They're always depth. So that's just the way you have to think about it rather than like a double dip lottery ticket.
No, you're totally right. You nail a bunch of stuff right there too. Sam Darnold only under contract for 1 year though too. So if they're thinking big picture, okay, yeah, all right, right now quarterback 3, but maybe next year. Again, this is all kind of a moot point. This is not happening, nor has it ever happened in the history of the draft like that.
Let's talk about, could the Vikings draft position in the first round, could it improve because of the tampering with Kirk Cousins? Mike Florio thinks so. We'll tell you whether we think so next on the Minnesota Football Party. Presented today by Game Time, now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Twins have a homestand coming up. Check out the Game Time app. You can get in easily with just 2 taps. It's very easy. You can get in after the first pitch for great deals, and you can take advantage of other awesome initiatives they have at Game Time, like zone deals where you choose the section, Game Time chooses the seats, or flash deals where you save more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. And the lowest price guarantee is so cool, with Game Time crediting you 110% of the difference if you find tickets that are better. And with Game Time ticket coverage, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Big week ahead, by the way, at Locked On Sports Minnesota. Ron Johnson's show tomorrow. I believe Gabe Henderson is stopping by. Minnesota basketball party previewing the Wolves playoff series on Wednesday. And then we're back on Thursday with more rampant draft speculation. Mike Florio, who has been in on the Cousins tampering bit the whole time.
He loves this. He loves
he
this.
loved
He
loved
really
the whole
obsessed.
saga. I mean, he
I
was
think he gets a real kick because he noticed it
early.
Yeah.
Yeah. He probably feels some ownership over the story for sure.
Yeah.
And he seemed to have the early steam that it was Atlanta. Even before the tampering period, he knew it was Atlanta. And then he sort of generated all this buzz about, it's already established. It's going to be Atlanta. So it makes sense that he would be kind of running the tampering train as he reports that the Vikings could switch. And that, again, this is more speculative. I don't think he has a source on this, but wondering if the Vikings and Falcons could switch first-round picks as punishment using last year's precedent of the Eagles and Cardinals swapping thirds, which I think actually comes into play this year. But their settlement was swapping thirds. That was tampering over Jonathan Gannon. This is tampering over a more higher profile, highly paid quarterback, Kirk Cousins. Any legitimacy to Florio's prediction, or is this something that gets settled after the draft, maybe for 2025? Or do you think that 8 and 11 could be swapped? Could that change the whole ball game, Luke Braun?
So when Florio first came out with all this, I was looking at the rules, and my understanding of the tampering rule is that they can award draft picks to the offended party, which would be the Vikings here. But that the offended party, like the process for that is for them to like file a claim over it and to like be the ones that brought up the grievance. So that could happen, for example, with the Giants, who have filed a grievance, who've kind of been the driving force in the Saquon Barkley version of this. It doesn't sound like the Vikings have done that. Kwesi, I mean, he's been really cagey. He's just kind of not answering. So maybe they haven't. He's just not answering. But it kind of sounds like the way he talks about it, saying things like, oh, I haven't heard from the league about anything like that. I don't know what's going on there. Like, it doesn't sound like the Vikings are the ones bringing up the grievance, and therefore the process works out differently, where the Falcons would maybe get docked, but nothing would be like awarded directly to the Vikings as the offended party. That's my understanding of it, but maybe they file a grievance and it's just that nobody's reported that. So it could be the case.
Which even if there's a chance, though, God,
that would
that
be
Kwesi is filing whatever he needs to file,
duty,
right? Like, why are you not asking the Lions for a
do we want to pull
first
that
round
thread
pick when you move down to 32?
That's my thing about it, is like, do we really, this is the way I was said it on Locked On Vikings. Do we want to start shining black lights in the hotel room? Like,
So,
we're sure we see when we start exposing everything. Because like,
not in our room.
Vikings did this with Jonathan Grenard. Like,
everybody else's room, sure. Not our room, though.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, like, it is, I actually don't think that would be like an issue. And, obviously outside looking in, I've got no idea how much evidence there is that the Vikings tampered with other players, right? But the thing is, it's like generally pretty difficult to prove tampering until like a player just outright says it, right?
Oops.
So like I think like that's like one of the things, and like unless it's like something weird like the Vikings are doing Kirk Cousins a solid, which would make no sense to me. I don't know why you would do that. I don't know why you'd shoot yourself in the foot like that, right? Like, and obviously it's not like a rival situation where like the Jets were like, oh my God, New England, I cannot believe you stole our coach from us, and they got a first round pick out of it. Like that's the Bill Belichick thing from like way back. Like I would be shocked, possibly appalled, if the Vikings needed to be involved in initiating that process and then declined on doing that, either because they chose not to, or maybe even more egregiously that they didn't know. That would be surprising to me. That said, the price that Floyer proposes, which is about 150 points on the Jimmy Johnson board. So the Falcons Cardinals things happened as a result of basically a negotiated settlement between the two parties. That would be this, right? And 150 points is about a mid third round pick in terms of value. That seems appropriate just in terms of total compensation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know.
All right, so let's play it out. So let's say that comes to fruition. Vikings get 8. How does that change the way you view this draft? Because at 8, if you're using Rich Hill, which I know, Arif, you're a big fan of, using Rich Hill, I mean, suddenly 8 and 23 is like too much to get up to number 3. Now, again, you're paying a premium. You're paying a premium. But it suddenly, I think, becomes more realistic that it only takes 2 first-round picks to make that trade up versus the 3 that we were previously expecting.
Yeah, you wouldn't think 3 spots would make that much of a difference or feel that different, right? But once you're in this top 10, man, every pick you can get, leapfrog one more spot is so much more valuable. 8 and 23 feels like you should be able to get to 4, no problem. 3, maybe a little sweetener on top, still maybe a 4th round pick or next year's 4th, something like that. But yeah, I still feel like 8 and 23 should get you at least to the conversation table of moving up to 3 with New England as well. But tough to say. I don't know.
Hey, hear me out. 8 means you can wait. Don't trade anything.
Oh, there you go.
I hear Drake May is falling.
Yeah.
Why is Drake May falling per PFF? Why would he fall?
This is a very good question. What's up with that?
Yeah, I'm curious about this. I was listening to and this podcast was posted a little bit ago, but the JT O'Sullivan, Brett Coleman DJ appearance on Bootleg Football.
Yeah, he has JJ McCarthy over Drake May.
Yeah, but like the question was like, why is Drake May falling? And essentially they were like, I don't know, man, this guy's really good. The guy, like, they ended up giving like pointers, like they were talking about how, with McCarthy, we know that he received NFL style coaching and he took that coaching well and he improved, and he's showing a lot of the things that you expect NFL quarterbacks to show, whereas May just didn't have that opportunity, right? Because like in an air raid style system, and I know that like Josh McCown was like his high school quarterbacks coach, but in high school you're focusing on a bunch of different stuff that's not, the minutiae of football. But in an air raid style system, they just didn't care about stuff like footwork. The timing was a lot less important to the way that the offense operated. So he wasn't coached on footwork and timing. And so predictably, his footwork and timing is a weakness of his. And so it could be that, an evaluator looks at that and gets a little bit scared because footwork is traditionally pretty difficult to fix. It really, I guess it would depend on how involved the coaches are in the process for drafting that quarterback. I think that we've all received the suggestion that, Kevin O'Connell is going to be very involved. And one would imagine that now that there's 2 quarterback coaches on staff, plus Kevin O'Connell, that they would be very involved in directly coaching maybe the technical aspects of quarterback play, which I want to remind everyone, technical coaching does not happen very often for the quarterback position in the NFL. It usually you kind of leave it alone. When Norv Turner tried to, maybe mess is the wrong word, but try to change Teddy Bridgewater's release, that was relatively unusual for the NFL. A lot of technical coaching happens in the offseason with a private quarterbacks coach, if it happens at all. So that would be a little bit different. That said, we see it sometimes, right? Josh Allen received a lot of technical coaching. A lot of that was actually private, not a result of the Buffalo Bills doing direct coaching, probably in concert with like his quarterback coach. But that should be pointed out, is that maybe that they would want to be directly involved with the technique coaching. So I don't know, but like it could be that these are elements that are in play, but it is kind of a difficult one to figure out because he is a very good prospect. So seeing him like fall is a little unusual, and this all could just be media perception. I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of feel it doesn't pass the smell test for me. I think someone's just trying to throw some smoke out there. But if I'm gonna try to give it like the benefit of the doubt, like I think the main thing about Drake May's footwork that is gonna like bother coaches is when he moves off of his spot, he doesn't keep his feet like shoulder width apart, which you're supposed to do. You want to kind of preserve your base if you're gonna move in the pocket a little bit. Like if you watch Tom Brady move in the pocket. You'll see that like his feet are always shoulder width apart. Like that's the textbook way to do it. And Drake May just starts taking off and sprinting, feet go narrow, and then he has to reset his base to throw or throw off platform, which he's very good at, but that's always going to be harder. And I think that the hard part is you have to psychoanalyze a little bit and guess why he's doing that, which is going to be inexact, but still like a necessary question to answer. Is he doing that because he just doesn't know how to move in the pocket and he just needs to learn, he just needs to drill that footwork a little bit? Or is he doing that because he's deciding to scramble and then changing his mind about scrambling and it's more of a mental thing? And which one do you feel like you're more comfortable coaching? What's your QB coach more comfortable coaching? Those are all really hard questions, and they're all rooted in something that's going to, at its core, be a guess. Maybe you can talk to him a little bit, but like that's going to be the kind of thing that gets you different opinions among NFL people. So I can kind of see like if somebody is like somebody like JT O'Sullivan is going to have Drake May. I think he has Drake May as QB4, right? Like I get it. I get where you're coming from, but I would also get where someone else is coming from that doesn't agree with that. So it's a difficult thing to parse.
People watch JT O'Sullivan's because he's got his own episode on just ranking the quarterbacks, which first of all, he doesn't like doing it. It's like pulling teeth. But yeah, and he essentially makes the argument that like, I don't know how to like separate these guys at like 3 and 4. You could basically throw a dart, and on a different day I might pick a different. So the guy that he ranks at 4 is not like a solid like this guy is worse. So that's important. But I highly
just not having him like comfortably 2 or 3 is like a hot take.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, maybe it's recency bias. It feels like this is the closest evaluation for like if Caleb Williams is in the tier of his own and the next 3 are in their own tier, like the tightest evaluation between 3 prospects we've seen in a while, where April 1st, I think we had almost certainty that it was Jaden 2, May 3, McCarthy 4, and now it's all scrambled. Now we got McCarthy 2, we got Jaden 3, we got May 9. We've seen every possible permutation, and I no longer have any certainty.
Can I say this? It is like it could be entirely a construction of wanting drama. So I'm pulling up the early version of the consensus board I have right now, which because it is fairly large, is not loading very well. But Excel is like a broken piece of software, and it's still the one I use. So the thing is, it is like emphatic in the consensus board I've got like 66 boards put in right now. It is emphatic among the draft analysts that I'm using here that Drake May is 2. Not a question. Caleb 1, Drake May 2, Jaden Daniels relatively close-ish at 3, and JJ McCarthy definitely 4. He's ranked 25th
that's
overall.
Best play. That's prospect rankings, not draft projection.
Yeah, it's prospect rankings. Yeah.
Okay.
And so like, and this is one of the things I've learned about doing this project over the years, and I'm going to have my most polarizing players story coming out soon, is that a lot of times we have these conversations about, I don't know about this guy's so polarizing, whatever. The classic example to me is Jadeveon Clowney, where everybody was nitpicking Jadeveon Clowney, right? And this is before I published any consensus big board stuff, but I did go back and look at it. And everybody was like, oh, there's no production here. His attitude sucks, all of that. And everybody ranked him number 1. Like, what were we talking about? If we're spending all this time saying this guy's not a good prospect or not as good as everyone thinks, and then the people who actually like just dig into it and want to rank people all rank him number 1, what are we doing? And it feels like something similar is happening with quarterbacks, where everybody is. I've seen a couple of boards where Drake May is the top quarterback prospect. It's kind of rare. There's 2 boards I have out of these 65, actually 3 now, I think, where Jaden Daniels is the top one. But 43% or something of the boards have Caleb Williams as the number 1 overall prospect, and about 70-80% of them have him as the top quarterback. Then after that, it's Drake May. Then after that, it's Jaden Daniels. I've got Caleb Williams, the number 2 prospect. That might change between 1 and 2. Drake May, the number 4 overall prospect. And then Jaden Daniels is a little bit further down. Where is he here? Trying to find 8. He's 8. And then JJ McCarthy's 25, right? Like that's what's happening. And it's so interesting the way that this conversation is playing out, because the people who are doing a ton of work trying to rank these guys have a clear separation between the two. So I don't know. It's fascinating to me the way that this conversation plays out. Of course, anything could happen once the draft begins, but like I think we got to keep in mind that like sometimes we just talk to talk. These are not the things that we think. We just talk to talk.
Yeah, Jack nailed it, saying that draft talk in March is probably more accurate than April. We're all bored now. We're all doing mocks where the Vikings take two QBs in the top 50.
You get burnt out. You start coloring outside the lines at a certain point, right? You start thinking outside the box.
You start drafting two quarterbacks, and
you start drafting two quarterbacks back to
even
back for the
PFF
first time in
gets
the
bored.
history. Even PFF. Well, I'm thinking back to just other draft
Let's not pretend
classes
PFF
now.
Doesn't have their own.
Thinking back to like 2021, Trevor Lawrence went 1,
Genuine.
Zach Wilson went 2, and then there was a lot of discussion as San Francisco trading all the way up for Mac Jones or Trey Lance,
Mac Jones.
or Justin Fields even. And
which is actually
Trey
a
Lance
really
goes 3, but
similar conversation. I'm really glad you brought up the Mac Jones thing because it's a really similar conversation. The JJ McCarthy thing. Not that they're comparable as prospects, although I think on the service level you could make the argument. But oh my God, JJ McCarthy could be number 3 overall, or could be the second quarterback, and he's ranked 25. Same thing with Mac Jones. Mac Jones was graded, generally speaking, by these boards as a first-round prospect. I don't remember where he was on the consensus board, but he certainly was not a top 10 player, right? And it's like the same thing. It's like this guy ranked in the 20s is now being talked about as the second or as the best quarterback in the draft or whatever. And everyone's talking about it, and then suddenly a team that we think is good at evaluating quarterbacks is rumored to like him. So now everybody likes him. It's like, oh wow, well, San Francisco likes him. Kyle Shanahan knows what he's doing. So certainly if they like Mac Jones, we should like it. So we're gonna talk up Mac Jones, talk about how good of a prospect he is. And now people who are exasperated by the Mac Jones talk, people who are like, I can't believe Mac, now they're the dummies, and we're gonna make fun of them for being mad that he's the 3rd overall projected pick or what. And it was just like, oh my God. And then of course that didn't happen. It was just like,
Yeah, 20. I mean, you can go on and on. 2018, is it going to be Sam Darnold number 1 overall? Is it going to be Baker Mayfield number 1 overall? 5 quarterbacks went in the first round. I don't think a lot of people had Josh Allen in that mix for number 1 overall. Josh Rosen, though, at a certain point, if you go back to March and April, those 6-7 weeks leading up to the draft, there was mock drafts that had Josh Rosen going number 1 overall as well. You know, Lamar Jackson as well, depending on, you know, which radio show you're listening to or which YouTube channel you're watching that day. You go over all the options.
It was a bit of a surprise when Baker Mayfield was selected.
It was.
I will say that.
Yeah, everybody thought it was going to be Darnold.
It absolutely was.
And when Arizona picked Rosen, which I think was 10th overall,
it was.
A lot of people thought that was a steal. So I will say that like going off of both the conversation and like the actual like nail your feet to the floor rankings, like that was a kind of an interesting whatever. Josh Allen going before Rosen was super interesting, right? Because he was like 7th or something like that.
7th. Yep.
Correct. That was really fun. Like in hindsight, now we can have a lot of fun with it. I was mad at the time because I get mad about random stuff that doesn't impact my life. That's the job. But
it's healthy. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very healthy. Yeah.
You lost a couple prop bets. It's fine. I get it. I remember.
Normal stuff, right?
There it is.
But yeah, that was kind of just an interesting draft because I don't think any of the quarterbacks went where they were quote unquote supposed to. Usually they do. There are occasions like Teddy Bridgewater fell a lot further than where the consensus boards were. 2018 was just weird in general. 2017, Mahomes goes a little bit higher, or both Mahomes and Trubisky go a little bit higher, right? Like, so, there's like, it's always a little bit weird, but the order is usually not that malleable. It tends to be, unless they're very like the 3 quarterbacks we have now at the top are tight enough together that you could see some change, but it tends to not change that dramatically.
Let's get to Justin Jefferson's impending extension. What are they waiting for? Plus your fan questions next on the Minnesota Football Party. Today's episode is presented by BetterHelp. The best way to squeeze the most important things into your life in a 24-hour day, you got to know what's important to you. You got to prioritize. You got to arrange the things that you value that make you happy, and make sure that those are getting your brain power, your attention. And therapy can help you find what matters to you so that you can do more of that. And if you're thinking of starting therapy, Figuring out what makes you happy? Give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. So you just fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched up with a licensed therapist, and you can switch at any time for no additional charge. A lot of us spend our lives wishing we had more time. I wish there were like 28 hours in the day sometimes. And just talking about it with somebody can help you prioritize things. So learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, collecting fan questions in the chat. Got a couple good ones already. Send us some more if you have them. First, I do want to get to Justin Jefferson's status and what comes next with him. I believe it was an Albert Breer report saying the Vikings are diving headlong into an extension here very soon. I think there was also some speculation that Paul Allen was giving a lot of attention to a possible Justin Jefferson trade, which often Paul Allen has that kind of steam. So we got it on both sides of the aisle right now. Is Justin Jefferson simply waiting for the market to get set with some of the impending numbers from CeeDee Lamb and Jamar Chase? Is that what this is about? Or is it something a little more difficult, or is it totally benign? Are the Vikings just on the normal path, waiting till July and training camp to get the deal done and announce it with the big press conference? Arif Hasan, what's the deal?
When's the last time Paul Allen like really nailed something? Like after
I was gonna say,
thing, like you got a lot of credit for like picking Anthony Barr as the first round
broken
pick,
clock twice a day.
He
was great
predicts
because like no one had picked Anthony Barr as the Vikings pick, right? Because it didn't really fit for a lot of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that,
doesn't he like predict a trade every time there's joint practices? Like, oh, they're sitting there watching all these San Francisco 49ers.
Does, dude. He does.
Yeah, so
Titans. Tart.
Yeah.
Well, first, I'm just going to put the trade stuff aside. Absolutely not. They're not going to trade him. But I'm more interested in what the length of the deal is going to be, because they are going to. I do think that they'll get a deal done. I don't think Kwesi was lying when he was like, "Man, you have no idea how close we were to extending," and having that all figured out. I think Jefferson wants, unusual for receivers, wants a relatively low drama situation here. I know that this is a different Vikings front office, but they very often in the past have announced deals like right before training camp. So it's going to feel like we're right up against the deadline when we're not. There's a full year on this year's contract, and also it could just happen, right? But I'm curious about whether or not Jefferson wants a shorter deal so he can hit the market, or rather, I guess his agent wants a shorter deal so he can hit the market sooner rather than later, or if he wants a longer deal, having just suffered the consequences of a season-ending injury, and how much security he wants on that longer deal. And I think that's like the holdup, right? Is whether or not you've got fully guaranteed or rolling guarantees or guaranteed for injury. I think it's a structure thing. I think for the most part, they've probably agreed on the numbers. And with that in mind, it's not a concern to me. I think that they're probably going to end up with like a $35 million a year contract. A lot of that money is going to be fake at the end of the deal. It's going to look good for Jefferson, and the question is just how much is guaranteed and for how long. So this doesn't concern me. This doesn't bother me. We just saw a receiver deal just hit again. That one was a pretty short-term deal, a 3-year extension plus the 5th-year option for Devonta Smith. And I guess we'll see kind of what happens with some of the other receivers like CeeDee Lamb. But yeah, I don't know. This doesn't really bother me.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if anything, Lamb and Chase are probably waiting for JJ, right? Like Jamar Chase was drafted a year later. Lamb feels like he needs JJ to kind of set the new bar so he can go just below it, right? But he's got to set that bar first. So I'm with you, Arif. I don't know. I just keep going back to the idea that, especially now that they're committed to bringing in a rookie quarterback for the next 5 years, and that they're already projected to have so much space in 2025, don't see a scenario or outcome where a deal isn't done by week 1 this year. I don't know when, maybe training camp, but we used to show up to training camp. We'd see big extensions to big, like core, big name players like Harrison Smith and Kyle Rudolph all the time, in years past. I got a hard time thinking you're going to bring in a rookie quarterback and not only have the money to get something done, but you got to give this quarterback all the weapons he can get, right? Like that's rule 1 of drafting a quarterback.
That would be very funny if like the whole deal with the Vikings is that they're so set up for a rookie quarterback. They've got this great, the offensive line's finally good. They've got a great receiving core. It's like, boom, you trade away Justin
and you're not just giving away a good weapon or like your number one, you're giving away the best wide receiver in the NFL.
Yeah.
Right? Like, oh, we got a surplus. We got 2, number 1 guys here. No, he's the best wide receiver.
If only T-Jack had Randy Moss, it would have been a different story for T-Jack.
Yeah, he definitely would have developed differently, for
definitely.
sure.
He would have had the best weapon.
Rips, by the way.
So do we see Jefferson? 3 options. Do we see him at all in off-season activities? Do we see him, but he's not doing anything? Or does he show up and participate?
I'm going to, my guess here is that he does not show up to OTAs and he does endorsement deals again.
Yeah. If he did that last
calendar.
Yeah.
What
Just
makes
what
you
happened
think
last
he
year.
won't do it
Like, there's
year?
no reason for him to do anything until he has an extension. And honestly, like, in the interest of the Vikings, yeah, don't do anything, buddy. Do not get injured at all, please.
I don't, in the interest of the Vikings, they actually, in this case, would want him to show up because developing chemistry with a new quarterback is
Yeah,
probably
like hold in. I mean, like, you don't need to, yeah, like, it's fine.
right. Also, I just want to point out real quick, we've got someone in the comments named Edwin, the 16th Viscount of Shrewsbury, saying that Jefferson is asking for multiple medieval tapestries and jewels. What an incredible commitment to a bit I've never seen before. That's
I like this aesthetic.
Just wanted to point that out. Remarkable.
I'm going to star that comment. You get a star.
How many tapestries is a first round pick worth?
Oh, man.
7.
Like
7.
large
Okay.
tapestries? Like, yeah, I'd say 7, maybe all the way up to 12, depending on kind of if it's
that
a
like tell
quarterback.
stories of military conquests and such.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
Gives you the history that you need.
No, for sure. Yeah.
Let's get a few fan questions in from Blue Stork. Not asking who the most skilled option is or who has the highest ceiling, but is Jaden Daniels' skill set more complementary to the Vikings players, coaching, and scheme over Drake May? And I think the common conception is, or perception is that he's not, that Drake May is the fit. They've got the McCown connection. But is there any validity to this, do you think, with Daniels?
My argument would be that Drake May is better at staying on time, and therefore that's a better thing for like Kevin O'Connell, like the McVay passing concepts that are very precise in their timing. That would be the thing for me, but they both have really different styles and definitely not so different or beyond the scope of what Kevin O'Connell can adjust for. So it's probably not much of a concern either way. But if we're going to debate for debate's sake,
yeah, and I'd also add on that May uses a greater proportion of the field in his passing map,
right?
And the Vikings passing game tends to also use like a good chunk of like it's not like a limited passing game.
The backside base type of thing.
Yeah, but if I were to make the argument right that Jaden Daniels is a better fit, I'd argue that. Not that Drake May isn't a big play quarterback, he is, but Jaden Daniels is a big play quarterback.
Yeah,
and this offense has always wanted to be a big play offense.
Right.
The way that they've tried to coach Kirk Cousins into taking more shots, even on non-play action plays and stuff like that. Like it's always wanted to be one, and I think that it's made moves to try and be one. Like the whole reason they got Josh Oliver was to get better at play action deep shots, which is like kind of counterintuitive, getting a blocking tight end so you can pass a little bit better. But that was the reasoning, and I think it's fairly solid reasoning. Jordan Addison is, a deep ball receiver. Justin Jefferson is typically the first read, even when the concept usually doesn't dictate that guy is the first read based off of alignment. And you're supposed to stay on that first read just a little bit longer in this offense than most other offenses. So that would be the argument, but I do think that Drake May is like a better fit schematically and coaching wise. Personnel wise, I don't think there's like a huge, I don't think one quarterback is better for the receivers than the other based off their play style. But I think that the other elements there Probably Drake May, but that would be the argument I would make if it was Jade Daniels.
Yeah, no, that actually makes a lot of sense. That was a good breakdown. I feel like I'd be ecstatic with either one, but you're right. With Daniels, it's a home run swing. I mean, 9 times out of 10. And that would just be that would excite me so much if
it would be fun.
Somehow they do end up swapping the 11 and the 8. And all of a sudden, maybe there's a realm where 8 can turn into 2, 8 and 23. And then what does that look like? 2025 first? I don't know. But if you can get up to 2, possibly, holy smokes, man, that would be a lot of fun.
Chris Olson, if we get 8 from the tampering, what's the price to get from 8 to 3 or 8 to 5? The difference in Rich Hill price is like the difference between a high 2 and a low 2. The Vikings don't have a 2. So that's either some combination to get to that
like
value or
swap a 4 and a 2, right? Like that.
Yeah. I again, there's the QB premium. Like the value, throw the values out the window to some extent. It does improve. It does improve your chances. But I don't think it's going to be apples to apples based on the trade charts. It's not going to operate that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any team is going to hold your feet over the fire. 100%. You're going to pay that quarterback premium tax for sure. And this goes back to the discussion we talked about from day one. If you're Washington, new organization, new GM, everybody else, and you're New England, right? Gerard Mayo, new coach, everything else. I got a hard time thinking either of those teams are going to pass on a quarterback. I know there's been a ton of discussion about New England is so far away from fielding a competitive roster. I get that. And trade down, that'll help a little bit, but you got to get your quarterback, man. At the end of the day, are you going to have a better opportunity to take a premium blue chip kind of quarterback coming out of college than you are right now? I don't think so. That's a huge gamble to move out of 3 or 2 for that matter.
We need to disparage Drake May a lot so that the Patriots hear it
right,
and then start second guessing. We
really
really need to participate in this psyop.
That's
the only way they do it.
If any team is subject to the whims of media analysis of draft prospects, it's the Patriots.
Well, I heard, and I don't know if you guys heard this.
Belichick's gone. It's a brave
I don't know if you guys.
Anything can happen.
Maybe you guys heard this or not, but
how much is Elliot Wolf on Twitter?
I heard Drake May didn't go to his teammate's birthday party, and that may just be hearsay. I don't know, but
we should start asking those questions loudly and emphatically just to make sure that we get the answer.
I heard he loves to go for drives with the Georgia Bulldogs.
What would you look for in a wide receiver 3 to complement Addison and Jefferson's strengths?
Is he good?
That's
pretty good, man.
Like Osborne is your most like if Osborne is the over/under of what a wide receiver 3 is. I mean, I think you're looking for that, and then can you go over a little bit? Like, can you just be a little better?
That consistency, but I think the deal is if we're looking for like the style of receivers,
right? The question is probably about the style of the receiver.
Yeah, these guys are both probably best suited as like deep threats, right? Like we want Justin Jefferson, we want Addison running posts, we want JJ running go balls, like we want these guys downfield, right? We don't want these guys catching 5-yard outs. So you probably want like a good after catch receiver. But also, it would be sick to have somebody who's like very clearly like a bigger body after catch receiver, like somebody who can be outside so that you can get more free releases for Jordan.
That's what I was going to say. That was my first thought is that, one of the biggest misconceptions about JJ coming out was that he was the slot guy, right? An inside guy. No, that wasn't the case. But, you can do a lot of fun things and great things and take advantage of a lot of defensive looks if you can move JJ back on the inside throughout a game. So having somebody with that outside inside flexibility, I think would just complete the entire, trio of those 3 wide receivers.
Somebody who can eat press and be the point man of the bunch or like the front man in a 2-man stack or something like that. And then that can get Addison free, or you can use that to get Jefferson free if you want.
Either one.
Or you can isolate him on the other side with those 2 on one side. Like you can do all kinds of
30 seconds, Arif.
What I think is kind of funny is with the way that you would characterize a complementary receiver for those 2 is really well characterized by who TJ Hawkinson just is, right?
Oh, true.
Do you want a guy do you want a guy who can win underneath and pull the coverage? Well, that's how the Vikings have been using him. Do you want a guy that's going to win on point? Well, TJ Hawkinson could do that. Do you want a big body that can win contested catches in the red zone? Hawkinson could do that. So I think like that's all the case. So just get a guy who's good, because I think stylistically, none of it kind of matters because you have, you're not going to have him for the first 8 weeks, but you have the guy.
Yeah, I just want speed. That's all I want. I just want a fast guy
Speed,
who can wreck.
Just
Malik
three fast guys. Just
Washington,
once in a while.
maybe. Yeah.
Miami
Um,
Dolphins. Let's go.
Yep.
That's all the
Pretty sure
time
on
we
turf.
have in the Minnesota football party. And as we exit, the worst wedding tradition. Machu Meech wants to know why and why do wedding parties exist. Let's just go dumbest wedding tradition. Luke Braun, you just got married. What's the dumbest?
It's the garter. The garter is horrifying. The garter is such a weird tradition. Like many times, that's like your cousins lining up to catch your garter. It's like covered in your sweat. Like, what is wrong with you? It's so weird.
Receiving line is my answer.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good
Man, I can't beat that. I'm gonna go with the Bengali wedding tradition. Force feeding the couple. That sucks. Don't do that.
Like cake in the face.
Wait a
or-
minute.
No. It's like a receiving line, except it's food, and
Oh.
you just take food and just stuff it in.
Do they get to
I hate
pick the food? Like,
No.
you haven't had enough vegetables today. Get in
Oh
there.
yeah.
There you
The
go.
people force feeding. Yeah, the guests get to pick the food.
Wow. Okay.
The couple does.
Wow. How much do you trust people?
Yikes.
Insert
Yeah,
the gif of Michael Scott
absolutely not.
inserting broccoli into Kevin's
Yeah.
mouth. That's what I'm
Right.
picturing.
Yeah.
I was gonna say the chicken dance song. Can we just 86 that? But I can't beat.
Yeah.
Cha
Cha-cha slide is getting close.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
Sure.
there's
Yeah, that
some
one
some of
too.
those cliched ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Sorry if you did all those things, Luke.
Also, farmhouse did none of them. Farmhouse boho is a bad aesthetic. Okay.
You hear that,
Thanks for
Luke?
watching and listening.
That was a long time ago. All right.
We appreciate all the engagement. We'll be back on Thursday on the Minnesota Football Party. See ya.